$65 billion. In a single overnight round, Anthropic just raised the largest private funding round in history, pushing its value to $965 billion, knocking on the door of $1 trillion. But the dollar figure everyone is sharing isn't the real story. Buried in the same announcement is one quiet line that matters far more than the money. Stay with me, and I'll hand it to you before this is over. Let's start with the number that broke through the noise overnight. Anthropic, the lab behind Claude, raised $65 billion in a single round. $65 billion. That values the company at $965 billion, knocking on the door of $1 trillion, for a startup that did not exist a decade ago. The backers reportedly include Altimeter, Dragoner, Greenoaks, and Sequoia. This is the biggest private raise anyone has ever closed. Here's why that figure stings in San Francisco. Just months ago, OpenAI sat on top of the world at roughly $850 billion. Overnight, Anthropic vaulted past it. The lab founded by people who once walked out of OpenAI is now worth more than the company they left. And reporting suggests Anthropic's revenue has quietly overtaken OpenAI's recurring revenue too. The underdog just became the favorite while the West Coast slept. But the money is not the headline. It's the symptom. The real story dropped at almost the same moment. A brand new model called Claude Opus 4.8. And the timing is the tell. Opus 4.7 was only 41 days old. 41 days. Anthropic just compressed an upgrade cycle that used to take half a year into barely 6 weeks. That pace alone should make every rival nervous. To understand why 6 weeks matters, picture the AI race as a sprint where the finish line keeps moving. Every time one lab ships, the others have to answer. When the gap between releases shrinks from months to weeks, the whole industry speeds up with it. Smaller players simply cannot keep that rhythm. So this isn't just a product update. It's Anthropic setting the metronome for everyone else and daring them to match it. So what actually got better? On agentic coding, the kind of work where the model writes and fixes software on its own, the score climbed from 64.3% to 69.2%. On multidisciplinary reasoning with tools, it rose from 54.7 to 57.9. Anthropic itself calls this a modest improvement. Not a revolution. But in a race this tight, a few points can decide who wins the contract. Then there's speed, and this is where it gets practical. Opus 4.8 ships with a fast mode that runs about 2.5 times quicker than before, and roughly 3 times cheaper to operate. And here's the kicker. The headline price didn't move. $5 per million input tokens, 25 for output, same as the last version. More speed, lower cost, flat sticker price. That combination is how you starve a competitor. And that's not even the strangest part. Anthropic also turned on a feature called dynamic workflows. Instead of one assistant answering you, the big model can now spin up and coordinate hundreds of smaller agents working in parallel. Reportedly capped at 1,000 of them. Think of it as a single AI hiring a temporary workforce to attack a giant task, like migrating an entire codebase, then dismissing them the moment it's done. There's a second new dial, and it's deceptively important. It's called effort control. You can now tell the model how hard to think, how much compute time and money to spend on a single answer. Quick and cheap for the easy stuff, slow and thorough for the high-stakes work. For the first time, the user, not the lab, decides where the expensive thinking goes. That's a quiet shift in power. Now zoom out, because two opposite forces collided in the same 24 hours. On one side, you have these trillion-dollar clouds, enormous models living in vast data centers, hungry for capital and chips. The funding, the valuations, the subagent armies all point one direction. Bigger, hungrier, more centralized. That's the future the headlines keep selling you. But overnight, a very different bet quietly landed on the table. A lab called Liquid AI released a model small enough to run on the device in your pocket. It packs roughly 8 billion parameters, but only activates about 1.5 billion at a time, with a context window of 128,000 tokens. Translation: real reasoning and tool use, running locally, no giant data center required. While the giants chase scale, someone just shrank serious AI down to a phone. Sit with that contrast for a second, because it defines the whole moment. One camp is racing toward God-sized models that cost billions to feed. The other is racing to make capable AI so small and cheap it runs offline, in your hand, with no monthly bill and no data leaving your phone. Both shipped on the same night. The future of AI isn't one road. It's splitting into two, and both are moving fast. And here's where it gets really interesting, because this isn't just lab politics. The same day, a startup called Triomics raised $22 million to put AI directly inside cancer clinics, automating the mountain of paperwork that buries oncologists and slows patients down. So while we argue about valuations, AI quietly moved one step closer to the room where someone hears the word cancer. That's the part the stock tickers miss. Now the reveal Anthropic almost buried. Tucked into the announcement was a tease for something they're calling Mythos, described as their most advanced class of models. And here's the twist, they are not releasing it. Not to you, not yet. Mythos is locked down, available only to a handful of partners, because the company says it still needs stronger safeguards before the public can touch it. Read that again. The most valuable AI lab on Earth just built something so capable it decided the world isn't ready for it. They say Mythos class models are coming to all customers in the coming weeks, but only once the safety work is done. In a race where everyone else is shipping as fast as they can, one company is deliberately holding its best card. That's either remarkable discipline or a remarkable marketing move, which brings us back to that one line I promised at the start. Anthropic says Opus 4.8 is more honest, that it's less likely to be overconfident and make claims it cannot support. Early testers say it now flags its own uncertainty and even pushes back on its own answers. An AI that says out loud, "I'm not sure," instead of inventing a smooth, confident lie, and that is a bigger deal than any benchmark, so wait until you see why. The single most dangerous thing about today's AI isn't that it's wrong, it's that it's wrong with total confidence. People trust the fluent, certain answer. A model that admits doubt breaks that spell. If honesty becomes the thing labs compete on, the entire arms race changes from who sounds smartest to who can actually be trusted. So what does any of this mean for you? Walking around tomorrow. First, the assistant you use is about to work alone for much longer, taking a task, breaking it into pieces, and grinding through it without you babysitting every step. The era of typing one prompt at a time is quietly ending. You're starting to hand over whole projects, not just questions. The relationship is changing under your fingertips. Second, if your job touches code, finance, research, or writing, the ground is shifting under you faster than the news cycle admits. The same tools that gained a few benchmark points overnight are the ones drafting reports, fixing software, and reading contracts in the background of companies you've never heard of. The gap between people who direct these agents and people who compete with them is widening by the week. Third, watch the money, because it tells you where this is heading. A near $1 trillion valuation and a record raise mean the smart capital is betting this is the early innings, not the peak. Whether that's vision or mania, we'll only know in hindsight. But when investors hand one private company $65 billion in a night, they're not pricing a chatbot. They're pricing a bet on who runs the next economy, and now you can see the line that mattered more than the money. It wasn't the $65 billion, and it wasn't the $900 billion valuation. It was 4 small words baked into the model. Less likely to be overconfident. In a year of AI hype that never admits doubt, the most valuable lab on Earth just made admitting doubt a feature. So here's my question for you. Would you actually trust an AI more if it told you, honestly, when it had no idea? Tell me in the comments. If this resonated, give it a like so the algorithm spreads it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.